Good afternoon. Welcome to another session of MasterMinds. And today we have with us Bill Hughes, who is the global head of real assets for LGIM, currently with assets under management of 35 billion. In addition to the day job, is an extensive list of extracurricular activities and interests. Bill is the ambassador and trustee to the UK Green Building Council. He's chairman of the Property Industry Alliance. He's also the past chairman of the Green Property Alliance and also the British Property Federation. And he was a commissioner for the Lions Housing Review. Good afternoon, Bill. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Charlie. Great to be here.
So we wanted to go through today and really find out from you how you have helped to navigate LGIM through the real estate market, in addition to the real assets that has been a more recent addition to your list of successes and responsibilities. But first of all, we wanted to try and get a better understanding of the individual behind the title and really get a better understanding of how you manage this very busy schedule with your sensible work-life balance.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a challenge, isn't it? I think all of us are super stretched. There's too little time, too much to do. I spend most days being pretty ruthless in prioritization of what I can do today that makes a difference. That's really the bottom line, but also making some time for yourself to have downtime, let the mind free spin a little bit is an important part of the equation. We all need to stay fit and healthy and astute, otherwise we won't be able to drive forward.
What do you think has been the key sort of skill set that set you apart and enabled you to take LGIM to a significant AUM now from what you inherited over the years?
Well, the LGIM story is a particular chapter of my career that's got its own distinct characteristics. I think above all else in the LGIM business, it's about being courageous at certain points of time, being brave enough to do things differently and to challenge convention. A number of our areas of business growth have been in areas that others hadn't perhaps seen early. We saw things early, so it's about being prophetic, or at least having a view of what the future looks like, then being courageous about doing something about it. And most of what we've done that's relatively new versus our competitors, most of it's worked really well.
Your profile is probably, arguably, more out there than many others. Is that something that you think has assisted both you and the business in the development of your career?
Yeah, look, I think profile and ensuring that outsiders have a perception of you as a leader and the business you run, I think that's important. Most of what we do, one way or another, interacts with the outside world. There's lots of partnerships we're in. You know, we pride ourselves on bringing in talent from other organizations. You know, I think you have to have some sort of profile. That's not really about me wanting to be self-promotional. It's much more about what's good for the business and attracting capital, being influential with government and advisors. All of those things actually come together with having an external profile that's credible.
And that government interaction has been pivotal in helping you to push forward the affordable housing components of LGIM, hasn't it? Yeah,
it has been. I mean, if you reflect on what sort of organisations can really make a difference in the housing sector, they need to be long-term, operate at scale, and be wanting to do the right thing across the whole of the UK. And one thing we did around about a decade ago was really actively seek to get into the housing sector, which, by the way, was one of the more obvious areas of supply-demand imbalance, made it very attractive from an investment point of view, just because organisations like L&G had not done that in recent times didn't mean to say it couldn't be done. So, I'm pleased with what we've achieved, and I think part of that is about working with government, with Homes England, central government, policy decision making, and also local government. In the world of increasing devolution with mayors and combined local authorities, that's been a really important dynamic to be known and trusted at a local level.
And influencing LGIM to pivot in that housing direction, was that something which took a battle at the time?
Yeah, look, Charlie, the honest answer is yes, it took some powers of persuasion and some tenacity and patience to get real commitment to that sector. I will not at all proclaim to have done that myself in this organisation. In the end, there were enough people who believed to back us going in that direction across a whole range of tenures. Other people within L&G Group showed real personal commitment there. So it was a bit of a team effort. It did take some time to get going, but even then, I think we got there ahead of most of our competitors.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And just in terms of, you are such an advocate for all ESG matters. How have you managed to weave ESG into that whole LGIM strategy? Because it's one of the key things that sets you apart.
Yeah, the beginning of that story, Charlie, is a year after I arrived here, so 14 years ago, we decided that ESG and what we called it in those days, sustainability, was going to be a key ingredient of success. Not for any other reason that it's the right thing to do from a fiduciary point of view, protect the value of assets, enhance the value of assets, adding value. And the world has very much come our way. What I did 14 years ago is we put together a diploma with the University of Reading, and it was an obligation on every single decision maker in my business to go and learn about the area. We had a 63-hour online training course. We all did it. So it starts with education and awareness, and then that influences how you think about it. And as you'd appreciate, against that background, it became an integral part of our decision making from around about 14 years ago. Now, it's not unusual at all to be really committed to that subject matter, be it the E or the S or the G. But I think we got there pretty early, and I think because of that, we've made a real good start to what needs to be done in the transition to net zero.
And just in terms of the culture of LGIM, have you seen or have you implemented a radical shift in culture in the 14 years that you've been there? What's been the main turning point, if so?
I don't think there's been a radical shift in culture, but I do think we're more identifiable as a culture now, and it's perhaps more universal than it was. We've always been about have a sense of purpose, do the right thing, behave as guardians of capital, remembering whose capital it is. And all of those things are visible. Alongside that, we now talk about inclusive capitalism. So thinking about the role of the private sector in terms of doing something useful and good for society as a whole. Those things have been around for a while, but I think have just perhaps really blossomed over the last decade or so.
What do you think, how have you seen that role morph and in terms of the skills that you're having to deploy on a daily basis over that period of time? What are the sort of key things that a leader needs to be demonstrating these days?
Yeah, I think that's about being clear on your direction into the future, so that the team and the wider group you work with knows where you're going, to get them to believe in that, to do things by example, to motivate, to praise, to celebrate success. All of those things, I think, build a strong winning culture, and everyone wants to be part of a winning team. So I think once you build momentum around that, to some extent it becomes, at least in part, self-fulfilling and a virtuous circle.
And as you look across the cadre of individuals at leading businesses at the moment within real estate, is there a particular aspect of leadership that you think is the hardest to deliver upon, though?
I think the experience that we've had here at L&G is about being part of change.
Yeah.
I think change is harder than manage the existing. And if you look at our business now compared to where it was, if you look at the scale of what we do in new areas, this has been a story of change above all else. And of course, that is not everyone's skill set. That is something that challenges many, but that's an inevitable part of what organisations like LNG, long-term capital at scale need to be willing to do. Standing still is not good enough. So I think that's the biggest thing to see as a challenge. And most organisations are not good at engaging positively with change, and that's what we try and make a virtue out of here.
What advice would you give, the 35, 40-year-old leader of tomorrow in order to make sure they're best equipped to handle the market forces?
Yeah, I think a thirst for knowledge and being curious and willing to challenge convention are really important. And that's partly me, again, re-emphasising the idea of change. I think success in the next decade or two will be about being part of the important change that we're making, particularly around energy transition. But that's one of a range of things going on. Being adaptive, listening, learning, being adaptive, being ambitious. That's what I want to see in people. And that's not right in every single role, but I think that's an important part of the leadership cadre of the future.
Is there anything fundamentally that you would have done differently with hindsight?
Look, it's a good question. Not a lot. I don't look back and have regrets anyway. That's not my way. But no, Charlie, I haven't got anything of any materiality that I would do differently in this role. I'll tell you, I'm delighted and actually a little surprised based on what I thought I was going into here, that I'm here. I've been here for so long. But that's about the organisation. That's about the fact that we've changed and challenged and moved forward. And I sit here today with as much excitement about what we can do in the future as I have got some pride in what we've done in the past 15 years.
Yeah. And Bill, accepting that the last few years have been an incredibly challenging environment and competitive environment, what actions have you taken as a leader and LGIM as a firm to make sure that you've retained and attracted your best talent within the team?
Yeah, look, I agree with the circumstances being challenging. We work really hard to attract and retain talent here, Charlie. That's an ingredient of success. It's more than anything about having the right senior team working together. I make sure I have personal relationships with all of those key people. We spend time getting to know each other. We like each other. On compensation, I work really hard to ensure that people are fairly compensated for the value they bring. And some of that is about alignment to success, and some of that is about making sure that we keep the plate spinning with regard to standard compensation. And that's important. It's also about them believing in the vision, being part of something into the future, feeling they could influence what we do. So I'm not overly hierarchical. I like to believe the individuals here share in their direction of travel and what we do. And I do think there's a big part of the feeling that people have about they can make a positive contribution through being here at LNG. That's one of the reasons they're here, and that's one of the reasons we're very good at retaining the talent.
Good. And Bill, you're never going to get away with being on a MasterMinds discussion like this without us seeking your predictions for the future. We've seen a bump in the base rate today. With your rosiest glasses on, what are your predictions for 2023?
Well, I think some of what I'm going to say is around the consensus, but perhaps I've got a few differences of opinion as well. I think interest rates and inflation are going to be stickier for longer. That's probably not a particularly different view. What does that mean for real estate? I think there's even more winners and losers. The difference between best and worst, both in terms of managers and also assets, is going to widen. I'm pretty excited about parts of the housing sector, which I think, where the negativity is overdone. I think if we get it right, the UK has an opportunity now to step forward and be purposeful and impactful in terms of how we get the best out of the UK, the talent in the UK around the universities we have, around innovation, really build some sustainable, self-sourced industries and business productivity. So I am positive about what we can do, but it does depend on courage and energy and real conviction about the direction of travel. And we need to expect cost of money to be higher for a while, so cheap capital not so prevalent. And we need to expect there to be an inflationary environment within which we can adapt and do things to some extent differently. You know, inflation hedging is a different subject now than it has been for the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, and capital raising too from now henceforth.
There remains things have changed a little bit, but there remains a wall of capital that wants to invest in private markets and real assets. That has not really changed. Because diversification within portfolios and using your illiquidity budget wisely is a long-term strategic trend amongst investors. And long-term capital doesn't need to be in liquid capital markets. Long-term capital can afford to be doing different things. The need for that private capital to really lean into the challenges facing the UK, most obvious one of which is the energy transition. That's an investment opportunity of a lifetime. That's really exciting.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for giving us an upbeat end to our discussion, and really a huge thank you from Ferguson Partners for taking part, Bill, and continued success on your part.
You're welcome, Charlie. Thank you for having me.